Weddings are supposed to stitch families together, but sometimes they rip you apart in ways you never saw coming. I stood in the corner of the banquet hall, clutching the pale blue shawl I'd saved for years, watching my son laugh with strangers. No one looked my way, not even him. That's when I felt it, a quiet ache, like a door closing on a life I thought I knew. I'm Margaret Thompson, and that moment changed everything, though I didn't know it yet. My husband, George, had been gone 3 years, and our son, Michael, was all I had left. I lived alone in a small house in rural Ohio, surrounded by cornfields that stretched like an endless promise. The air always smelled faintly of earth, and the silence was heavy, not peaceful, but heavy, like it was waiting for something to break it. I spent my days folding laundry, baking apple pies from George's old recipe, and checking the mailbox, hoping for a letter that never came. Michael used to call every Sunday, his voice bright, telling me about his job in the city, his girlfriend, Sarah. But those calls got shorter, then stopped. I told myself he was busy, that young people have their own lives. That's what we raised them for, isn't it? But deep down, I wondered if I'd become a shadow in his world. For weeks before the wedding, Michael called out of the blue. His voice was rushed, excited, but distant, like he was reading from a list. He said he was marrying Sarah, that it was happening soon. I smiled into the phone, my heart lifting, and asked about the plans. He said it was going to be simple, elegant, at a vineyard an hour away. I offered to bake the pies for the rehearsal dinner, the ones he loved as a kid, with cinnamon and a touch of nutmeg. He laughed, a quick, polite sound, and said they had it covered. "Don't worry, Mom," he said, and I heard the dismissal in his tone, soft but sharp, like a paper cut. I hung up and sat at my kitchen table, staring at the chipped mug I'd used for years. The house felt smaller, the walls closer, and I wondered when I'd stopped being part of his story. Still, I held on to hope. I dusted off my blue dress, the one George said made my eyes shine, and ironed it carefully. I polished my shoes, packed a small bag with tissues and a smile I practiced in the mirror. Maybe this wedding would bring us back together, I thought, like it was supposed to. The vineyard was beautiful, all rolling hills and twinkling lights strung across wooden beams. I arrived early, my hands shaking as I smoothed my dress. The air smelled of grapes and fresh-cut grass, but it didn't feel welcoming. I walked into the reception hall, my heels clicking on the polished floor, and a young woman with a clipboard handed me a name tag. It read Margaret Thompson. No mother of the groom. No ribbon like the ones pinned to Sarah's family. I clipped it on, my fingers fumbling, and looked around. People milled about, their laughter loud, their glasses clinking. I saw Michael near the front, his arm around Sarah, both of them glowing. He didn't see me. A man in a suit directed me to a table near the back, next to a couple I didn't know. The card on the table just said Margaret, no last name, no title. I sat down, the chair cold against my legs, and watched as the closer tables filled with signs for bride's family and groom's friends. My tablemates, a man who sold car parts and a woman who bred show dogs, smiled politely but talked over me, their voices buzzing about things I didn't understand. The toasts began, and I waited for my moment. Sarah's dad spoke, then her sister, then a friend from college who told a story about a road trip that made everyone laugh. Someone asked if the groom's mom would speak. Sarah smiled, quick and tight, and said, "Maybe next time." The room moved on, but I didn't. My throat tightened, and I folded my hands in my lap, the shawl slipping to the floor. I picked it up, brushed it off, and kept my eyes on my plate. The food came, salmon overcooked, with a sauce too rich for my taste. I pushed it around, took a bite, and felt it sit heavy in my stomach. Michael danced with Sarah, then her mom, then someone's cousin. I waited, hoping he'd look my way, but he didn't. By the end of the night, the hall was emptying, and I was still there, alone, my name tag crooked, my pie untouched in the kitchen where I'd left it for the staff. I drove home in silence, the radio off, the road dark except for my headlights. The ache from the wedding followed me, settling into my chest like a guest who wouldn't leave. Back at home, I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch, still in my dress, staring at the living room walls. Photos of Michael as a boy hung there. Him with a soccer ball, him at graduation, him smiling next to George. I remembered the nights I stayed up when he was sick, the way I'd check his forehead every hour, The way I'd drive through rain to pick him up from practice. I thought love was enough to keep us close, but maybe I'd been wrong. 2 days later, Michael called. His voice was warm, like he was trying to make up for something. He said he wanted me to come for dinner, just us two, no Sarah. I said yes, too quickly, and spent the day baking his favorite cookies, oatmeal with raisins, wrapping them in foil like a gift. I drove to his new house, a neat brick place with a manicured lawn, so different from my sagging porch and peeling paint. He opened the door, hugged me lightly, and led me to the kitchen. The table was set, but something felt off. There was no smell of food, just a bottle of wine and a stack of papers, clipped together, a pen resting on top. Michael poured me a glass, asked about my drive, and complimented the cookies. His words felt practiced, like he was leading up to something. Then he slid the papers toward me. He said it was a simple form, a power of attorney, just to make things easier if anything happened to me. His voice was calm, too calm, like he'd rehearsed it in front of a mirror. I looked at the papers, the words blurring together. Financial control, immediate access, no expiration. My heart sank, but I kept my face steady. I asked what he meant by if anything happened. He talked about a neighbor who had a stroke, a friend's mom who forgot her bank pin. His words sounded caring, but they didn't feel it. I told him I'd take the papers home. Think it over. He nodded, but his eyes flicked to the pen, then back to me, like he was waiting for me to sign right there. We didn't eat. The cookies stayed wrapped, and I left, the papers heavy in my bag, my hands shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. That night, I couldn't sit still. I paced the kitchen, the floor creaking under my feet. The papers sat on the counter, glaring at me. I thought about Michael, about the boy who used to draw me pictures, the man who now saw me as a problem to solve. I went to the attic, where George kept his old files. He'd always said if I needed anything, it'd be there. Behind a box of Christmas lights, I found a metal case, locked but with a key taped to the side. Inside was a folder, my name written in George's careful handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. There was a letter, short and clear, saying he'd set things up so I'd never have to rely on anyone. He said not to tell Michael, not because he didn't trust him, but because money changes people. Below the letter were documents, bank accounts, investments, a property in Colorado. All told, it was worth over $7 million. I read the number twice, my breath catching. George had known something I hadn't, and he'd left me a way out. I sat on the attic floor, the cold biting through my sweater, the folder open in my lap. I didn't feel rich. I felt heavy, like I was holding something too big for one person. The papers from Michael were still downstairs, and I saw them for what they were now. Not protection, but control. I thought about the wedding, the name tag, the empty chair. I thought about the boy I'd raised and the man he'd become. I didn't cry, but I felt a shift, like a crack in a wall I'd been leaning against for years. I closed the case, carried it downstairs, and placed it under my bed. The next morning, I called Ellen, a friend from church who'd worked as a lawyer before retiring. Her voice was steady, like she'd been waiting for my call. I told her everything, and she said to come over. I grabbed the folder, Michael's papers, and drove to her house, my heart pounding with something new. Not fear, but purpose. Ellen's house smelled like lavender and old books, the kind of place that felt safe but sharp, like she could see right through you. I sat on her couch, the metal case on my lap, Michael's papers tucked inside. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, and I kept glancing at the door, half expecting Michael to show up and ask what I was doing. Ellen poured tea, her movements slow but sure, and sat across from me. Her eyes, gray and steady, locked onto mine. "Tell me everything, Margaret," she said, her voice low, like we were sharing a secret. I started with the wedding, how Michael hadn't looked at me, how the name tag felt like a slap. I told her about the dinner, the papers he slid across the table, the way his smile didn't reach his eyes. Then I opened the case, showed her George's letter and the documents about the $7 million. Her eyebrows lifted, but she didn't interrupt. When I finished, she leaned back, sipped her tea, and said, "He doesn't know, does he?" I shook my head, my throat tight. "Good," she said. "Keep it that way for now." Ellen spread the papers on her coffee table, her fingers moving fast, like she was solving a puzzle. She pointed to Michael's power of attorney form, her face hardening. "This isn't just about helping you," she said. "This gives him control of everything, bank accounts, house decisions. If you'd signed it, you'd have nothing left to say." My stomach twisted. I thought of Michael's voice, so smooth, calling it a simple form. I pictured him at the wedding, laughing with Sarah's family, while I sat alone. Ellen flipped through George's documents next, her eyes narrowing at the bank statements. "Your husband was smart," she said. "He set this up so no one could touch it without your say-so. But we need to protect it better. A trust, maybe. Something ironclad." I nodded, not fully understanding, but trusting her. She said she'd call a lawyer friend, someone still practicing, to help. I felt a spark of relief, but it didn't last. As we talked, my phone buzzed on the table. It was a text from Sarah, Michael's wife. "Margaret, can we talk? It's important. Come by tomorrow." My heart skipped. Sarah had never texted me before, not once in the 2 years she'd been with Michael. I showed Ellen the message and she frowned. "Be careful," she said. "This feels coordinated." Coordinated? The word stuck in my head, heavy like a stone. I thought about the dinner, the papers, the way Michael's eyes flicked to the pen. Was Sarah part of this? I didn't want to believe it, but the doubt crept in, cold and sharp. I texted back, saying I'd come, but my hands shook as I typed. Ellen put her hand on mine. "You're not alone in this," she said. "But don't sign anything, and don't tell them about the money." I nodded, but my mind was racing, picturing Michael and Sarah whispering together, planning something I couldn't see. The next day, I drove to Michael's house, the same brick place with the perfect lawn. My stomach churned the whole way, and I kept George's letter in my purse, like it could protect me. Sarah opened the door, her smile bright but tight, like she was trying too hard. She wore a crisp white blouse, her hair pulled back, looking like she belonged in a magazine. "Margaret, thanks for coming," she said, her voice sweet but clipped. She led me to the living room, where Michael was waiting. He stood up, hugged me, and for a second, it felt real, like the old Michael. But then I saw the coffee table, more papers, another pen, and a notepad with numbers scribbled on it. My chest tightened. "What's this?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Michael sat down, his hands folded. "Mom, we just want to make sure you're okay. Sarah and I were talking, and we think you should move closer to us. Maybe sell your house. It's too big for you now." His words sounded kind, but they felt like a trap. Sarah nodded, leaning forward. "We found a nice place, a senior community nearby. It's safe, and we'd visit all the time." Her smile didn't waver, but her eyes were cold, like she was reading a script. I looked at the papers on the table, real estate listings, a contract for the senior home, and another copy of the power of attorney form, this one with my name already typed in. My heart pounded. I thought of my house, the porch where George and I used to sit, the garden where I planted roses every spring. Sell it. Move to a place where I'd be watched, controlled? I pictured George's letter, his warning about money-changing people. I looked at Michael, searching for the boy who used to run to me when he scraped his knee. He wasn't there. "I'm not ready to sell," I said, my voice quieter than I wanted. Michael's smile faded, just for a second, and Sarah's hand twitched on the table. I left without signing anything, promising to think it over. My hands shook as I drove home, the road blurring through tears I didn't let fall. I kept thinking about the numbers on their notepad. Big numbers, like they were already counting my money. When I got home, I called Ellen again. She answered on the first ring, her voice calm but urgent. "What happened?" she asked. I told her everything, the papers, the senior home, the way Michael and Sarah talked like they'd already decided my life for me. Ellen was quiet for a moment, then said, "Margaret, there's something you need to know. I did some digging after you left yesterday. Michael's been asking around town about your house, talking to realtors. He's not just planning. He's moving fast." My breath caught. Realtors? He hadn't even asked me. I felt betrayed, but worse, I felt stupid for hoping he'd changed. Ellen said we needed to act quickly. She'd already talked to her lawyer friend, a woman named Diane who specialized in trusts. Diane could meet us tomorrow to lock down the $7 million so no one could touch it. I agreed, but my mind was spinning. I went to my bedroom, pulled out George's letter, and read it again. His words felt alive, like he was sitting next to me. "You're stronger than you know, Maggie," he'd written. I hadn't felt strong in years, not since he died. But now, with Michael's papers on my counter and George's case under my bed, I felt something shift. I wasn't just fighting for money. I was fighting for myself, for the life George wanted me to have. I stayed up late, writing down questions for Diane, my handwriting shaky but sure. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, and I thought about Michael, about what he'd do next. I didn't know it then, but he was already planning something bigger, something that would push me to a breaking point I never saw coming. The morning sun barely reached my kitchen, the curtains still drawn from the night before. I sat at the table, George's letter in one hand, a cold cup of coffee in the other. My eyes burned from staying up, writing questions for Diane, the lawyer Ellen trusted. I kept hearing Ellen's words, Michael asking realtors about my house, moving behind my back. It felt like a knife, not sharp but dull, grinding into me. I looked at the fridge, where a photo of Michael as a kid was taped, his gap-toothed smile so bright. I wanted to call him, ask why, but my phone stayed quiet. Instead, I packed George's folder and drove to Diane's office, a small brick building in town with a sign that said Miller Legal Services. My hands shook as I parked, not from fear anymore, but from something hotter, like anger mixed with sadness. I was tired of feeling small. Diane was younger than I expected, with short brown hair and a warm smile that didn't feel fake. Ellen was already there, sitting in a chair by the window, her hands folded like she was ready for a fight. Diane took one look at me and said, "Margaret, you're doing the right thing." Her voice was steady, like she'd seen women like me before, women who'd been pushed to the edge. I handed her George's folder, my fingers brushing the letter inside. She read it quietly, then looked at the bank statements, her eyes widening just a fraction. "7 million, she said almost to herself. "Your husband planned well." I nodded, my throat tight. I told her about Michael, the wedding, the papers he wanted me to sign, and the realtors. Diane leaned forward, her pen tapping the desk. "He's moving fast, too fast," she said. "We'll set up a trust to lock this down. No one gets access unless you say so." Ellen nodded, but her face was grim. "There's more, Margaret," she said. "I didn't want to tell you last night, but Michael's been asking about your health too. At the pharmacy. Said you've been forgetful." Forgetful? The word hit me like a slap. I'd forgotten where I parked my car once, maybe twice, but who hasn't? I thought of the time Michael called last month, asking if I'd taken my pills. I'd laughed, said I was fine, but now it felt different, like he was building a story about me. My chest ached, not just for me, but for the boy I'd raised, who used to climb into my lap and tell me he'd never leave. Diane saw my face and put her hand on mine. "We'll protect you," she said. "But you need to be ready. If he's asking about your health, he might try to prove you can't manage alone." I felt sick, picturing Michael telling people I was slipping, that I needed him to take over. I wanted to scream, but instead I said, "What do I do?" Diane wrote down a plan. Transfer the money to a trust, update my will, get a doctor's letter saying I was sharp. Ellen added, "And don't see him alone again. Bring me or someone else." I nodded, but inside I was breaking, wondering how my son became someone I needed protection from. I drove home, the folder heavier now with Diane's notes. My phone buzzed as I pulled into the driveway. It was Michael, not a text, but a call. I stared at his name on the screen, my heart pounding. I answered, my voice shaky. "Mom, where've you been?" he asked, his tone light but with an edge. "Sarah's worried. You didn't sign the papers yet, did you?" I froze, my hand tight on the phone. Why was he asking about the papers? Had he seen me at Diane's? I lied, said I'd been at the grocery store, that I'd look at the papers soon. He paused, then said, "Good. We're coming by tomorrow. Just to talk, okay?" His voice was warm, but it felt like a mask. I said okay, hung up and sat in my car, the engine still ticking. Tomorrow. I had one day to prepare, one day to decide how to face my own son. I called Ellen, told her about the call. She said, "I'll be there. And bring those papers. We'll show him you're not alone." Her words steadied me, but only a little. I felt like I was standing on a cliff, the ground crumbling under me. That night I couldn't sleep. I walked through my house, touching things George and I had picked together, the lamp with the chipped base, the quilt on the couch. I stopped at Michael's old room, now just storage, boxes piled where his bed used to be. I opened one, found a drawing he'd made in 3rd grade, a stick figure family labeled Mom, Dad, Me. My eyes stung. And I let the tears come this time, hot and quiet. I didn't know if I was crying for him or for me. Then I heard a noise outside. A low scrape, like a footstep on gravel. My heart jumped. I turned off the light, crept to the window, and peeked through the curtain. A car was parked across the street, its lights off, but I could see someone inside, just a shadow. I stood frozen, my breath shallow, until the car pulled away, slow and silent. Was it Michael? Sarah? Someone else? I locked the doors, checked the windows, and sat on the couch, clutching George's letter like it could keep me safe. My mind raced. Were they watching me now? Did they know about the money? By morning, I was exhausted but wired, like I'd drunk too much coffee. Ellen arrived early, her face set, like she was going to war. We sat at the kitchen table, George's folder and Diane's notes between us. I told her about the car, and she frowned. Could have been nothing, she said, but her voice wasn't sure. Or it could have been them checking on you. She called Diane, who agreed to come by later, just in case. When Michael and Sarah pulled into the driveway, my stomach twisted. Michael knocked, his usual quick tap, and I opened the door. He smiled, hugged me, but his eyes darted past me, to Ellen sitting at the table. Sarah was behind him, holding a casserole dish, her smile as tight as ever. We brought food, she said, her voice too bright. They sat down, and Michael started talking fast, about how they just wanted to help, how the senior home would be perfect. I listened, my hands folded, feeling Ellen's steady presence beside me. Then I saw it, Sarah's purse, open on the counter, with a folded paper sticking out. It looked like a bank form, my name typed at the top. My heart stopped. How did they have that? I kept my face calm, but inside I was reeling. How did they know about my bank? Had they gone through my things? I thought of the car last night, the way Michael asked about the papers. I looked at Ellen and she gave a tiny nod, like she saw it too. Michael, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Why's my name on that paper in Sarah's purse? His face froze, just for a second. Then he laughed, too loud. Mom, it's nothing, just some info we looked up to help you. Sarah's smile slipped, and she reached for her purse, tucking the paper deeper. Ellen leaned forward, her voice sharp. Help her how exactly? The room went quiet, the air thick, like we were all holding our breath. Michael looked at Sarah, then back at me, his eyes different now, not warm, not cold, but something else, desperate. He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, Diane's car pulled into the driveway. I felt a rush, like I was about to jump off that cliff and land somewhere new. The kitchen went still, the only sound the faint hum of Diane's car engine shutting off outside. Michael's eyes flicked to the window, then back to me, his smile gone. Sarah clutched her purse, the paper with my name still peeking out. Ellen stood up, her chair scraping the floor, and said, Margaret, let Diane in. I nodded, my legs heavy as I walked to the door. My heart was pounding, not just from fear, but from something deeper, like I was waking up after years of sleep. Diane stepped inside, her briefcase in hand, her face calm but sharp, like she knew the room was a minefield. She smiled at me, then at Ellen, and said, Good to see you, Margaret. I brought the trust papers. Michael's head snapped up. Trust papers? He asked, his voice tight, like he was trying to keep it light. Sarah shifted in her seat, her casserole dish forgotten on the counter. I sat back down, Diane beside me, her presence like a shield. Michael, Sarah. I started, my voice shaky but clear. I saw the paper in your purse. It's got my name on it, my bank details. How do you get that? Sarah's face went pale, and she looked at Michael, her eyes wide. He leaned forward, hands flat on the table. Mom, it's not what you think. We were just looking into options, to make sure you're safe. His words sounded smooth, but they felt hollow, like a song I'd heard too many times. I shook my head. Safe? You went to realtors about my house. You asked the pharmacy about my health. You didn't ask me, Michael. Not once. My voice broke on his name. And I hated it, hated how much it still hurt to say it. He opened his mouth then closed it, his jaw tight. Sarah jumped in, her voice high. Margaret, we're family. We're trying to help. You're alone out here, and we worry. Ellen snorted, crossing her arms. Help doesn't look like sneaking around, Sarah. It doesn't look like bank forms you didn't tell her about. Michael's face reddened and he snapped. You don't know what it's like, Ellen. Mom's getting older. She can't handle everything alone. I felt a sting, like he'd slapped me. Can't handle it? I said, louder than I meant. I raised you alone after your dad died. I paid the bills, fixed the leaks, kept this house standing. Don't tell me what I can't handle. The room went quiet, the air thick with words nobody wanted to say. Diane opened her briefcase, pulled out a folder, and slid it toward me. Margaret, she said. These are the trust documents. They protect your assets. Everything George left you. No one can touch them without your permission. Michael's eyes locked on the folder, and I saw it. A flicker of something, not just surprise but hunger. Assets, he said, his voice low. What assets? Mom, you said Dad didn't leave much. I looked at him, my son, the boy who used to beg for one more bedtime story. I wanted to tell him everything, to trust him, but George's letter burned in my mind. Money changes people. Your dad took care of me, I said, keeping my voice steady. That's all you need to know. Sarah leaned forward, her smile gone. Margaret, if there's money, we could use it for the family. For our future, for your grandkids someday. Her words sounded sweet, but they felt like a hook, pulling at me. I thought of the vineyard, the name tag, the way they'd planned my life without asking. This isn't about family, I said, my voice cracking. This is about control. Michael stood up, his chair scraping loud. Mom, that's not fair. We're trying to do what's right. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Diane raised a hand, her voice calm but firm. Michael, Sarah, let's be clear. Margaret's setting up a trust. It's her decision, her money. If you push this power of attorney, I'll have to look into how you got her bank details. That's not a road you want to go down. Sarah's face froze, and Michael sat back down, his hands clenched. I looked at him, searching for the boy I knew, but all I saw was a man I didn't recognize. Why didn't you just talk to me? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I'm your mom. I would have listened. He didn't answer, just stared at the table, his jaw working like he was chewing on words he couldn't say. Sarah reached for his hand, but he pulled away, and for a second, I saw her flinch, like she wasn't sure of him either. Ellen broke the silence. Margaret, sign the trust papers. Let's finish this. I nodded, my hands shaking as I took the pen from Diane. I signed my name, each letter feeling like a step away from Michael, from the life I thought we had. Diane gathered the papers, her voice soft. It's done. The money's safe. You're safe. But I didn't feel safe. I felt like I'd lost something bigger than money, my son or the idea of him. Michael stood up, his voice low. Mom, I didn't mean for this to hurt you. We need help sometimes, too. His eyes met mine, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the old Michael, the one who cried when his goldfish died. But then Sarah stood, her purse clutched tight, and said, We should go. They left without taking the casserole, the door clicking shut behind them. I sat there, staring at the empty chairs, my heart heavy. Ellen put her hand on my shoulder. You did good, Margaret. You stood up for yourself. I nodded, but tears stung my eyes. I thought of the drawing in Michael's old room, the stick-figure family we used to be. Diane packed her briefcase, but before she left, she handed me a card. This is a doctor I know, she said. Get that letter about your health. Just in case. I took the card, my fingers numb. That night I didn't sleep again. I kept hearing Michael's voice, saying they needed help. What did he mean? Was he in trouble? I wanted to call him, to fix it, but then I remembered the bank form, the realtors, the car outside my house. I went to the window, checked the locks, and saw headlights in the distance, just for a second, before they vanished. My stomach twisted. Were they watching me still? Or was it someone else? Then my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. We need to talk, Margaret. It's not over. My blood ran cold. I didn't know the number, but I knew it wasn't Michael or Sarah. Someone else was out there, and they knew my name. I stood frozen in my kitchen, the phone still in my hand, the text from the unknown number glowing on the screen. "We need to talk, Margaret. It's not over." My heart pounded so loud I could hear it, like a drum in my chest. The house was dark, the only light coming from the street lamp outside, casting shadows on the walls. I checked the locks again, my fingers fumbling, and called Ellen. She picked up fast, her voice groggy but sharp. "Margaret, what's wrong?" I read her the text, my voice shaking. "I don't know who it is, Ellen. It's not Michael or Sarah. What do they mean, it's not over?" She was quiet for a second, then said, "Don't answer it. I'm coming over. Stay put." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me, and sat on the couch, clutching George's letter like it was a lifeline. The words from the text looped in my head, each one heavier than the last. Ellen arrived in 20 minutes, her coat thrown over pajamas, her face set like she was ready to fight. She locked the door behind her and sat next to me, her hand on my arm. "Show me the phone," she said. I handed it over, and she squinted at the screen. "No name, no history. Could be a burner phone," she said, her voice low. "Burner phone?" I asked, my stomach twisting. "Like in the movies? People who don't want to be traced." She nodded, her mouth tight. "Margaret, this isn't just Michael anymore. Someone else is in on it. Maybe someone he's working with." I felt sick, picturing my son caught up in something bigger, something dark. Why would he do this? I whispered, my eyes stinging. Ellen squeezed my arm. "Money makes people do ugly things. But we're not letting them win. You hear me?" I nodded, but my heart was breaking, thinking of Michael, the boy who used to pick dandelions for me, now tangled in something I couldn't understand. We stayed up, talking in whispers, like the walls might be listening. Ellen said we needed to call Diane first thing in the morning, maybe even the police if the texts kept coming. I didn't want to think about police, not with my own son involved, but the fear was real now, sharp and cold. I told Ellen about the headlights I'd seen, the car outside my house. Her eyes narrowed. "You didn't tell me that before," she said. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice cracking. "I thought I was imagining it." She shook her head. "You're not imagining this, Margaret. Someone's watching you. We need to be smart." She pulled out her phone, typed something, and said, "I'm texting Diane to come early. And you're not staying here alone tonight." I started to argue, but she cut me off. "No, Margaret. I'm sleeping on the couch. That's final." Her voice was firm, but her eyes were soft, like she knew how much I was carrying. The next morning, Diane arrived before the sun was fully up, her briefcase in one hand, a coffee in the other. She looked at the text, her face calm but serious. "This is harassment," she said. "We can trace it, but it'll take time. For now, we focus on keeping you safe." She pulled out a new document, a letter from a doctor she'd contacted yesterday. "This says you're in good health, mentally sharp. No one can claim you're unfit to manage your affairs." I took the letter, my hands trembling. "Thank you," I said, my voice barely there. Diane looked at me, her eyes kind. "Margaret, you're stronger than you think. George knew it, and I see it. Don't let them make you doubt that." Her words hit me hard, like a light breaking through fog. I thought of George, his quiet faith in me, and felt a spark of something, maybe courage, maybe anger. My phone buzzed again, another text from the same number. "You can't hide it forever. We know." I gasped, showing it to Ellen and Diane. Ellen's face went hard. "That's enough," she said. "We're calling the police." But before she could dial, there was a knock at the door, loud and sharp. My heart stopped. Diane stood, her hand on my shoulder. "Stay here," she said, and walked to the door, Ellen right behind her. I heard voices, low and urgent, then Diane called, "Margaret, it's okay. It's just Linda from church." Linda stepped inside, her face pale, her scarf crooked. "Margaret, I had to come," she said, her voice shaking. "I overheard something at the diner yesterday. Michael was there, with a man I didn't know. They were talking about your house, your money. The man said he could make it quick, whatever that means." My knees buckled, and I sank into a chair. "What man?" I asked, My voice barely a whisper. Linda shook her head. I don't know, but he looked wrong. Like he wasn't from here. Ellen grabbed her phone, dialed the police, and started talking fast. Diane sat next to me, her voice steady. Margaret, listen to me. We're going to protect you. The trust is airtight, and now we've got evidence someone's after you. You're not alone. But I felt alone, like the world was closing in. I looked at Linda, her eyes wide with worry. Why didn't you tell me yesterday? I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. She flinched. I didn't know what to do, she said. I thought maybe I heard wrong. But then I saw that man outside your house last night, in a black car. I couldn't stay quiet. My breath caught. The car. It was real. I looked at Ellen, then Diane, and said, what do they want from me? Diane's face was grim. Your money, Margaret. And they think you're an easy target. Ellen added, but they're wrong. You're not weak, and we're not letting them near you. The police arrived, 2 officers with notepads and calm voices. I told them everything, the texts, the car, Michael's papers, Linda's story. They wrote it all down, asked for the phone, and said they'd look into the number. One officer, a young man with kind eyes, said, Mrs. Thompson, do you have somewhere safe to stay? I looked at my kitchen, the chipped mug on the counter, the photo of Michael on the fridge. This was my home, but it didn't feel safe anymore. Ellen spoke up. She's staying with me until this is sorted. I nodded, too tired to argue. As the police left, my phone buzzed again, not a text, but a voicemail from Michael. My hands shook as I played it. His voice was low, almost a whisper. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to go so far. Meet me tomorrow alone. I can explain. I looked at Ellen, her face hard, and Diane, her eyes worried. I didn't know if I could trust him, but he was my son. The voicemail ended with a sound in the background, like someone else talking, someone angry. My heart raced. Was Michael in trouble, or was this another trick? I felt torn, caught between love and fear, and I didn't know which way to fall. I sat at Ellen's kitchen table, my phone still in my hand, Michael's voicemail echoing in my head. His voice had sounded small, almost scared, but that background noise, someone angry, talking fast, stuck with me. I wanted to believe he was sorry, that my son was still in there somewhere, but my heart felt like it was splitting in two. Ellen poured me tea, her hands steady, but her eyes kept darting to the window. You're not meeting him alone, she said, her voice firm. Not after those texts, not after that car. I nodded, but my mind was on Michael, the way he used to hug me when he was little, his head barely reaching my waist. Now he was a stranger, and someone else was out there, watching me. I looked at the mug in my hands, plain white with a tiny crack, and thought of my own kitchen, my own mug, left behind. I didn't feel at home anywhere anymore. Diane called, her voice sharp through the phone. Margaret, the police traced the number. It's a prepaid phone, bought in cash 2 towns over. No name, but they're looking at security cameras. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. What about Michael? I asked. Was it him? Diane paused, then said, they don't know yet. But his voicemail, it's suspicious. Don't meet him without me there. I agreed, but my stomach churned. I played the voicemail again, listening for clues. Mom, I'm sorry, he'd said, but the word sorry felt thin like paper tearing. That angry voice in the background. Was it the man Linda saw at the diner? I looked at Ellen, her face tired but fierce. What if he's in trouble? I said, my voice breaking. What if he needs me? Ellen set her cup down hard. Margaret, he's not a kid anymore. He made choices. You can't fix this for him. The doorbell rang, and I jumped, tea spilling on my hand. Ellen stood, her hand on my shoulder. It's probably Linda, she said, but she checked the peephole first. It was Linda, her face red from the cold, carrying a bag of groceries. She stepped inside, her voice shaky. Margaret, I couldn't stop thinking about you. I brought some food. Thought you might need it. She set the bag down, pulling out bread and a container of soup. Her kindness hit me hard, and I felt tears coming. Thank you, I said, my voice thick. Linda hugged me, her coat still damp from the morning frost. I feel awful, she said. I should have told you sooner about that man at the diner. He looked dangerous. I froze, My hand on the soup container. Dangerous how? I asked. Linda hesitated, then said, he had a scar on his cheek, and he kept looking around, like he didn't want anyone to hear. Michael looked nervous, kept checking his phone. I sank into a chair, my legs weak. Ellen sat next to me, her voice low. Margaret, we need to talk to Michael, but not on his terms. We picked the place, the time. Somewhere public. I nodded, but my heart was racing. I wanted to call him, to hear his voice, to ask why he was doing this. But then I thought of George, his letter, the way he'd protected me without me knowing. I had to protect myself now. I looked at Linda, her hands twisting together. Did you hear anything else? I asked. She bit her lip, then said, the man mentioned a deal, something about getting it done fast. Michael said, she doesn't know yet. I thought he meant you. My breath caught. She doesn't know. The words felt like a punch, and I pictured Michael at the diner, plotting with a stranger. Was it about the money? Or something worse? Ellen grabbed her phone. I'm calling Diane. We need her here. Diane arrived in under an hour, her face grim. She sat down, opened her laptop, and started typing. Margaret, I checked your bank records, she said. Someone tried to access your account yesterday, using your name but a different email. It was blocked, thanks to the trust, but they're not stopping. My heart sank. Was it Michael? I asked, my voice barely there. Diane shook her head. I don't know. The email's fake, but it's linked to an IP address near Michael's house. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My own son, or someone he knew, trying to take what George left me. I looked at Ellen, then Linda, their faces full of worry. What do I do? I said, tears spilling now. Diane's voice was soft but firm. We set a trap. You agree to meet Michael, but we control it. The police will be there watching. I nodded, but my hands shook as I typed a text to Michael. Okay, let's meet. Tomorrow noon at the diner on Main Street. He replied fast. Just you, Mom. Please. My heart twisted. He sounded like my boy again, but I didn't trust it. Ellen read the text over my shoulder. He's desperate, she said. That's not good. Linda spoke up, her voice small. Margaret, I'm so sorry. If I'd said something sooner. I reached for her hand, squeezing it. You're here now, I said. That's enough. But it wasn't enough, not really. I felt like I was losing everything. My son, my home, my safety. That night, Ellen slept on the couch again, her phone close, the lights on. I lay in her guest room, staring at the ceiling, thinking of Michael's voicemail, the man with the scar, the words she doesn't know. I clutched George's letter, its edges worn from my touch. I whispered to him, like he could hear me. I'm trying, George. I'm trying to be strong. Outside, I heard a car slow down, then speed away. My heart raced, and I knew tomorrow would change everything one way or another. Morning light crept through Ellen's curtains, but it didn't feel warm. I sat on the edge of the guest bed. George's letter crumpled in my hand. My phone silent after texting Michael about the diner. My stomach was in knots, thinking about meeting him, about that voicemail, the angry voice in the background. Was he really sorry, or was this another trick? Ellen knocked softly, her face tired but steady. You ready, Margaret? She asked, her voice low, like she was afraid to break the quiet. I shook my head, my eyes burning. I don't know, I said. He's my son, Ellen. How did we get here? She sat beside me, her hand warm on my back. You didn't do this, she said. He made choices. But you're going to face him today, and you're not alone. I nodded, but my heart felt heavy, like it was carrying every memory of Michael, his first bike, his high school graduation, the way he'd hug me tight. We met Diane at the diner before noon. The air thick with the smell of coffee and bacon. The place was busy, waitresses bustling, plates clinking. Diane picked a booth by the window, where we could see the street. 2 police officers, plainclothes, sat at the counter, sipping coffee, their eyes scanning the room. Diane leaned close, her voice calm. Margaret, stick to the plan. Ask Michael why he's doing this. Get him talking. The police will watch, and we'll be right here. I nodded, my hands twisting the napkin in my lap. Ellen squeezed my arm. You're stronger than you feel, she said. I wanted to believe her, But all I could think about was Michael's face at the wedding, how he didn't look my way. The bell above the door jingled. And there he was alone, his jacket wrinkled, his eyes tired. My heart jumped, half hope, half fear. Michael slid into the booth across from me, his hands fidgeting. "Mom," he said, his voice soft. "Thanks for coming." I searched his face, looking for the boy I knew, but his eyes kept darting to the door. "Why am I here, Michael?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Why the papers, the realtors, the bank forms? Why didn't you just talk to me?" He looked down, his fingers tapping the table. "It's not what you think," he said. "I got in trouble, Mom. Bad trouble. I owe money, a lot of it, to some guys. They said they'd hurt me, hurt Sarah, if I didn't pay." My breath caught, and I leaned forward. "What guys? Who are they?" He shook his head, his voice low. "I can't tell you. But I thought if I could get your house, sell it, it'd be enough to get them off my back." My heart broke hearing the fear in his voice, but anger burned through it. "So you lied to me?" I said, tears stinging. "You went behind my back. Made me feel like I was losing my mind?" Michael's eyes met mine, wet and red. "I didn't want to, Mom. I thought I could fix it without you knowing. I'm sorry." His voice cracked, and for a moment, I saw my boy scared and small. I wanted to reach for him, to hug him, but then I remembered the texts, the car, the man with the scar. "Who's the man from the diner?" I asked, my voice sharp. His face went pale, and he looked away. "Nobody," he said too fast. I leaned closer, my voice low. "Don't lie to me, Michael. Linda heard you. She saw him." "Who is he?" He swallowed hard, his hands shaking. "His name's Ray," he said finally. He's the one I owe. He knows about you, about the house. He's been watching." My stomach dropped, and I glanced at Diane, who was listening, her face tight. Ellen whispered, "Keep him talking." I took a breath, my voice trembling. "Watching me? The car outside my house, the texts, that was him." Michael nodded, his head barely moving. "I didn't want him to," he said. "I told him to leave you alone, but he said you had money, more than the house. He wouldn't stop." My heart stopped. More than the house. How did this Ray know about the $7 million? I hadn't told anyone but Ellen and Diane. I looked at Michael, my voice breaking. "Did you tell him, Michael? Did you tell him about your dad's money?" He shook his head fast. "No, Mom, I swear. I didn't know about any money until you mentioned assets yesterday. Ray, he has ways of finding things." I felt sick, my hands gripping the napkin so hard it tore. "You brought this man to my life," I said, tears spilling now. "You put me in danger, Michael." He reached for my hand, but I pulled back. "Mom, please," he said, his voice desperate. "I'm trying to fix it. That's why I called you. Let me handle Ray. Just give me the house, and it'll be over." I stared at him, my heart shattering. He was still asking for my home. Even now, with police watching, with Ellen and Diane right there. Diane leaned in, her voice low. "Michael, that's enough. Margaret's not giving you anything. The police are here, and they heard you." Michael's eyes widened and he looked around, spotting the officers at the counter. He stood up, his chair scraping. "You called the cops?" he said, his voice loud, drawing stares. "Mom, how could you?" I stood too, my legs shaking but my voice steady. "Because I'm not your pawn, Michael. I'm your mother, and I deserve better." He froze, his face pale, then turned and walked out, the bell jingling behind him. I sank back into the booth, tears streaming down my face. Ellen put her arm around me, her voice soft. "You did it, Margaret. You stood up to him." But I didn't feel strong. I felt empty, like I'd lost my son for good. Diane signaled the officers, who followed Michael outside, keeping their distance. She turned to me, her eyes kind but serious. "We've got enough to question him now," she said. "And we'll find this Ray. But Margaret, you need to stay with Ellen a bit longer. It's not safe at your house." I nodded, my hands trembling. As we left the diner, I saw a black car parked across the street, the same one I'd seen before. The driver's window was down, and I caught a glimpse of a man with a scar on his cheek. My blood ran cold. He stared at me, then drove off, slow and deliberate, like he wanted me to know he was there. I stood outside the diner, the cold air biting my face, Ellen's arm around me. The black car with the scarred man, Ray, was gone, but his stare lingered in my mind, like a shadow I couldn't shake. My heart was still racing from Michael's words, his plea for my house, his fear about owing money. I wanted to run after him, to fix him, but my feet stayed planted. Diane guided us to her car, her voice low. "Margaret, we're going to the police station. They need your statement about Michael and this Ray guy." I nodded, my throat tight, and climbed into the back seat, clutching my purse with George's letter inside. Ellen sat beside me, her hand on mine. "You did the right thing," she said, but her voice was soft, like she knew it didn't feel right yet. I looked out the window, the town blurring past, and saw a mother pushing a stroller. I remembered Michael at that age. How he'd giggle when I tickled his feet. Now he was running from me, or toward something worse. At the police station, the air smelled like coffee and old paper. Officer Daniels, the young one with kind eyes, sat us down in a small room. He had my phone, the text from the unknown number on a printout. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, "we're looking for Ray. Michael gave us a last name, Carter. We've got a lead on him, a guy with a record for fraud." My stomach twisted. Fraud. I pictured Michael at the diner, nervous, with this man. Did Michael say anything else? I asked, my voice shaky. Daniels hesitated, then said, "He's scared, ma'am. Says Ray's been pressuring him for months, threatening his family. He didn't want to involve you, but Ray found out about your husband's estate." I froze. "How?" I said. "I never told him." Daniels looked uneasy. "Michael thinks Sarah might have slipped. She works at a bank, right? Maybe she saw something." My heart sank. Sarah. The bank form in her purse, her tight smile. Had she betrayed me too? Ellen leaned forward, her voice sharp. "What's being done about Ray?" Daniels scribbled in his notepad. "We're tracking his car, checking cameras. But Mrs. Thompson, you need to stay somewhere safe. Ellen's place is good for now." I nodded, but my mind was spinning. Sarah. Michael. Ray. It felt like a web, and I was caught in the middle. Diane spoke up, her voice calm. "Margaret, the trust is locked tight. Ray can't touch your money. But we need to keep you out of his reach." I looked at her, tears welling up. "Why me?" I said, my voice breaking. "I didn't ask for this money. I just wanted my son back." Diane's eyes softened. "I know," she said. "But you're strong, Margaret. You're fighting for yourself now." I wanted to believe her, but all I felt was loss, like Michael was slipping further away with every word. Back at Ellen's, we sat in her living room, the TV off, the quiet heavy. Linda stopped by, her face pale. "Margaret, I checked with a friend at the bank," she said, her voice low. "Sarah's been asking about your accounts, saying you're her mother-in-law, that you're confused. She tried to get access last week." My breath caught, and I gripped the couch. "She lied about me?" I said, my voice trembling. Linda nodded, tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know she'd go that far." Ellen stood pacing. "That's it," she said. "We're not just hiding, Margaret. We're fighting back. Diane, can we press charges?" Diane nodded, her face grim. "Harassment may be fraud. We'll need more proof, but it's a start." I listened, but my heart was breaking. Sarah, who called me family, was part of this. I looked at Linda, her hands twisting her scarf. "Thank you for telling me," I said, my voice soft. "You didn't have to." She hugged me, her arms warm. "You're my friend," she said. I couldn't stay quiet. That night, I lay in Ellen's guest room, the darkness pressing in. I kept hearing Michael's voice, saying he was sorry, saying he was scared. I wanted to call him, to ask if it was true about Sarah, but Diane had my phone now, with the police. I held George's letter, tracing his handwriting. "You're stronger than you know," he'd written. I whispered back, "I don't feel strong, George." Then I heard a noise, a low thump, like something hitting the side of the house. My heart jumped. I crept to the window, my hands shaking, and saw nothing but shadows. But as I turned away, my phone, now on the nightstand, lit up with a new text from a different number. "Give it up, Margaret, or it gets worse." I gasped, my hands cold, and called for Ellen. She ran in, saw the text, and grabbed her phone to call the police. My heart raced, and I knew Ray was closing in, But I wasn't sure if I was more afraid of him or of losing Michael forever. Ellen's face went pale as she read the text on my phone. "Give it up, Margaret, or it gets worse." The words hung in the air, cold and heavy, like a storm about to break. I sat on the guest bed, my hands shaking. George's letter crumpled on my lap. Ellen grabbed her phone, her voice sharp. "I'm calling Daniels. This is too much." She dialed, pacing the small room, her slippers scuffing the floor. I stared at the text, my heart pounding. Ray knew where I was. He wasn't just watching my house. He was here at Ellen's. I looked at her, her jaw tight as she spoke to the police. Yes, another text. Same kind of threat. "We need someone here now." She hung up, her eyes meeting mine. "They're sending a car," she said. "You're okay, Margaret. We've got you." But I didn't feel okay. I felt like a mouse in a trap, waiting for the snap. Diane arrived minutes later, her hair messy, her eyes wide. She'd been on the phone with the police too. "Margaret, they found Ray's car on a camera near your house," she said, sitting beside me. "He's been circling for days. They're close to picking him up." I nodded, but my throat was tight. "What does he want?" I asked, my voice small. Diane's face softened. "Your money, Margaret. He thinks he can scare you into giving it up." I shook my head, tears burning. "I didn't want this money," I said. "I just wanted my family." Ellen knelt in front of me, her hands on my knees. "You still have family," she said. "Me, Linda, Diane, we're here. And Michael, he's lost, but you're not." Her words hit me hard, and I cried, not quiet tears but big, messy ones. I thought of Michael's face at the diner, scared but still asking for my house. I wanted to save him, but I was so tired of trying. The police arrived, Officer Daniels and a woman named Officer Hayes. They took my phone, photographed the text, and asked me to walk through everything again. The diner, Michael's voicemail, Ray's scar. I told them, my voice shaky, about Sarah's bank questions, the man Linda saw. Daniels nodded, his pen moving fast. "We've got a warrant out for Ray Carter," he said. "And we're talking to Sarah today. She's got some explaining to do." I looked at him, my heart twisting. "What about Michael?" I asked. Is he safe?" Daniels hesitated, his eyes kind but careful. "He's not in custody, but he's not talking much. We think he's scared of Ray too." I closed my eyes, picturing my son alone, afraid. "Can I see him?" I said, my voice barely there. Hayes spoke up, her voice gentle. "Not yet, Mrs. Thompson. Let us handle Ray first. You stay with Ellen, keep safe." After they left, Diane pulled out her laptop. "Margaret, we're adding more protection," she said. "I'm filing a restraining order against Ray, and we'll list Michael and Sarah as persons of interest. You don't have to see them unless you want to." I nodded, but my heart ached. I looked at Ellen, her face worn but fierce. "What if Michael's telling the truth?" I said. "What if he's really in trouble?" Ellen sighed, sitting beside me. "Then we help him, but not at your expense. You've given him enough, Margaret. It's time to take care of you." I looked at her, then at Diane, their faces full of strength I didn't feel. "How?" I asked, my voice breaking. Diane smiled, soft but sure. "You already started. The trust, standing up to Michael. You're stronger than you know." That afternoon, Linda came by, her arms full of flowers from her garden. "Thought you could use some color," she said, setting them on Ellen's table. The roses smelled sweet, like my own garden, and I felt a pang for my house. "Thank you," I said, hugging her. She held me tight, her voice low. "I keep thinking about that diner," she said. "I should have done more." I shook my head. "You did enough," I said. "You're here now." We sat, the four of us, drinking tea, the flowers bright against the gray day. But then my phone rang, a private number. My heart stopped. Diane grabbed it, answered, and put it on speaker. A man's voice, rough and low, said, "Margaret, you're making this hard. Sign over the money, or I come for you." My blood ran cold. Diane hung up, her face pale. "That was Ray," she said. "He's desperate." Ellen stood, her voice shaking but strong. "He's not getting near you." I looked at the flowers, the roses I loved, and felt a fire in me. I wasn't running anymore. I was going to fight. Ray's voice echoed in my head, his threat cold and sharp, like a blade held too close. I sat at Ellen's table, the roses Linda brought wilting slightly, their petals soft against the wood. My heart was still racing, but something inside me had shifted. I was done being scared. Ellen was on the phone with Officer Daniels, her voice steady. He called her directly, she said. You need to move faster. Diane nodded, her laptop open, typing up the restraining order. I looked at them, Ellen, Diane, Linda. Women who barely knew me a month ago, now fighting for me like family. I thought of Michael, my boy, lost in his own mess, and Sarah, who'd betrayed me. I thought of George, his letter, his belief in me. I stood up, my hands steady for the first time in days. I want to end this, I said, my voice clear. I'm not hiding anymore. Diane looked up, her eyes sharp. What do you mean, Margaret? I took a breath, feeling the weight of every choice I'd made. I want to talk to Ray, I said. Set it up with the police. I'll tell him the money's locked in the trust. He can't have it. Ellen put her phone down, her face worried. That's dangerous, she said. Let the police handle him. I shook my head. They're close but not close enough. I need to face this for me. Linda reached for my hand, her voice soft. You sure, Margaret? You don't have to. I squeezed her hand, my eyes wet. I do. For the woman I was, who let people walk over her. For George. Diane nodded, slow and sure. Okay, she said. We'll do it safe with the police. The next day, we met at the police station. Daniels and Hayes set up a sting at the park near Ellen's house, a quiet place with open fields where they could watch. I wore a wire, a tiny thing taped under my sweater, my heart pounding but my mind clear. Ellen hugged me tight before I left. You're braver than you know, she whispered. I smiled, tears in my eyes. I'm learning, I said. At the park, I sat on a bench, the wind cold on my face, George's letter in my pocket. Ray arrived, his scar catching the light, his eyes hard. Margaret, he said, sitting beside me. You're smarter than Michael said. I kept my voice steady. The money's in a trust. You can't touch it. Walk away, Ray. His jaw tightened, but before he could speak, police cars rolled in, silent but fast. Daniels grabbed him, cuffs clicking. Ray didn't fight, just stared at me, like he'd underestimated me. I stared back, my heart strong. Michael was at the station when I got there, his face pale, his hands cuffed. The police had picked him up after Ray talked, spilling everything. Michael owed Ray thousands from a bad business deal. And Sarah had dug into my bank records, hoping to pay it off. I looked at Michael, my son, and felt love and pain tangled together. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice breaking. He looked down, tears falling. I was ashamed, Mom. I didn't want you to know I failed. I wanted to hug him, but I stayed still. You broke my trust, I said. But you're my son. Get help, Michael. I'll be here, but not like before. He nodded, his shoulders shaking. Sarah was charged with fraud, her career over. Michael faced lesser charges, but he'd lost more, my faith in him. I moved back to my house, the roses in my garden blooming again. Ellen, Linda, and Diane came by often, their laughter filling the rooms. I started a book club at the library, meeting women like me, strong in quiet ways. I kept George's letter on my nightstand, a reminder of who I was. The $7 million was safe, some donated to the church, some set aside for me. I wrote a letter to my old self, the one who felt invisible at the wedding. You're enough, I wrote. You always were. If you're listening, feeling small or scared, know this. Your voice matters. Find it, hold it tight, and don't let go. I did, and it saved me. Moral lesson. Strength comes from standing up for yourself, even when it hurts. Trust your heart, lean on those who lift you up, and never let anyone make you feel less than you are.